being spotlighted. So in a sec, you'll see that. There we go. So we'll give it another minute or two before we really begin the session. But why don't we open up the chat box? Let's do that, particularly if anybody's new. If this is one of the first times that you've been here, you're really welcome to introduce yourself. Just say your name and where you are in the world, maybe what you're studying or what brings you to a mindfulness session. And also for you or for everyone else as well, the theme for today's session is around mindful listening. So listening, being aware of external sounds, of the external environment, and maybe of people that we're in conversation with. And then also listening to sounds internally. Our thoughts often express themselves auditory. How do you say it? Audibly. So maybe you've had that experience as you're thinking. It kind of sometimes almost sounds like your own voice in your head. That's often the way that we can pay attention to internal sounds. So if anyone has any experience of what it might mean to listen mindfully, whether you've been here before or not, then I'm all ears. It'd be really nice to hear where you're coming at with it all. Nice, and I just got a couple of messages through to me personally. Thank you for your greetings. And I'll just say as an introduction as well, maybe while you guys are writing something, if you want to introduce yourself, I'll just say who I am. My name is Solomon. I'm the lead mindfulness teacher here at StudyStream, based in the UK. I'm in Brighton. Anyone ever been to Brighton? No? South Coast. It's very nice. And about an hour from south of London. So I teach here. I teach students in schools and universities and companies. Yeah, the best part of my day is running these sessions. We run these sessions every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for university students. And excitingly, actually, we are this week starting sessions for pre-university students as well on Tuesdays and Thursdays at a slightly earlier time as well. So I'm really excited for us to start that. Okay, let's have a look at the chat. No one's right. What a fail that was. No one's written a single thing. It's okay. I won't take it personally. Maybe, you know, we've got some new people here. It's not a problem. Let's go into it. So I find mindful listening a really interesting topic, and I'll just talk about it for a couple of minutes, and then we'll move into a meditation practice, which I'll guide you through. And then because I can see how active you are all in the chat box, we'll open that back up again. And I have to remember, actually, not everyone understands the British sarcasm and humor. I should stop doing that quite so much. People might think I'm serious. So we'll open up the chat box, and you guys can let me know how you found the practice and ask me any questions. So mindful listening is something that I find particularly useful in life, but also particularly as students and as we study. So there are different ways in which we can mindfully listen, and there are various benefits that we might experience as a result of developing this capacity. So simply one way to think about it might be that our environments are often very loud. They are full of distractions, and maybe as we sit here trying to study and get things done, there are people making a noise outside or in the house in which we are, or maybe there are just you know, cars going past, or people shouting in the street. Maybe the doorbell buzzes. All these different things can really get us out of that maybe mode of focus or concentration that we were perhaps in. It can kind of knock us out, and it can sometimes be difficult to get back into it. But even at a smaller, more minor level, just generally, we live in busy environments, many of us. And so when we're constantly bombarded by it, our attention can be just constantly shifting. And it can be quite difficult to just get down to have our attention focused on one thing. So just being able to mindfully listen, being able to be aware of sounds passing by in our environment, but not necessarily being distracted by them or getting caught up in a storyline around them, can be really helpful. Another way that mindful listening can be of benefit is when we are in conversation with someone else. So much of the time, maybe this is just me, tell me if I'm not the only one, we maybe are having a conversation with someone else, but at the same time, we're kind of listening to them, but we're also maybe thinking about what we're going to say in response. We're preempting it. Or maybe we are listening to them, but at the same time, for just like 20 seconds, we're thinking about, oh, I'm actually quite hungry. I wonder what I'm going to eat after this. And again, our attention is just pulled away from it, and we're not quite being as present as we can for that other person. And sometimes that can, if we've ever experienced that, if we've ever found that someone is not incredibly present with us, it can sometimes, you know, that sense of being close to that person, of being seen and being heard and understood, can be broken a little bit. And often we just can't, we're just not there. We don't get all the details in quite the same way as we could if we were truly present. But often also in conversation, we also, even when we're listening, we bring our own judgments along for the ride as well. So we're constantly interpreting what we're hearing through our own lens and through our own experiences. So we're not hearing the information in a neutral manner. We're often kind of putting our own spin on it. And there can be real benefits by just allowing those judgments, those automatic associations, to just be quiet for a minute and just allow whatever's coming in. And so we can just hear what our friend has to say neutrally. And then the last thing to mention is the internal sounds that I mentioned before about the thoughts that are going around in our minds all the time. So these can often appear as sounds, as our voice in our head, and we might this can be really helpful to process information, but sometimes that voice can kind of just be annoying, or it can be quite negative sometimes. And if we get really wrapped up in those storylines and those thoughts, it can sometimes just stress us out or bring about some anxiety or make us a little bit sad, just because, you know, that's how life is sometimes. We're not always really kind to ourselves. So again, being aware of the sounds, the internal sounds, and just having that capacity to observe them, be neutral with them, not necessarily buy into the storyline of what it is that they're telling us. It's a real skill that can help us. It can help us relax, reset, and focus, and be kinder to ourselves as well. So the practice that we're going to do today is a listening exercise, of course, and we're going to begin by listening initially to outside sounds, external sounds, and just training that mindfulness muscle in our brains to just observe without judgment or attaching anything onto it and following this line of story that might easily be associated with the sound. And then after a bit of time, we'll turn that attention inwards and notice if there are any thoughts present. And we'll just notice those sounds, the internal sounds. And again, using that first half of the practice, observing and letting go external sounds, applying that exact same skill internally, noticing the sounds, the thoughts in our minds, noticing and letting them go. And we're just going to practice that for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back together again and see how we found that experience. So let me just adjust that. Okay, so everybody, to begin this practice, as always, let's give our bodies a little stretch, a little bit of movement if you wish, a little massage to any part of the body that would appreciate it. Maybe you've had a bit of a long day, a lot of sitting down, a lot of straining over a laptop. And we can really start to embody this sense of self-kindness and awareness straight from the beginning of this practice, even as we move and settle. And then when you're happy that you've done that, you can just allow the body to settle and find a way of sitting that feels comfortable, whatever that means to you. But remembering that this is a practice of falling awake rather than falling asleep, so maybe not quite so comfortable that it's going to encourage you to nod off. And then when you've done that, the invitation is to allow the eyes to close. It's nice and naturally, just a full shut. And again, just allows us to bring our attention to where we wish to focus it, rather than having all these visual distractions around us. So we're just going to begin by settling into this posture and noticing how it feels. And maybe you notice if your feet are planted firmly on the floor in front of you, maybe you just notice how that feels. A sense of weight and pressure of the feet against the floor. And then starting by bringing attention to the rhythm and flow of your breath. So we're just narrowing this focus of attention and placing it in the flow and movement of the breath. Remembering as we do this that there really is no expectation that this meditation ought to feel a particular way or that we should have any kind of specific experience. We're just noticing whatever the experience is as the breath moves in and out of the body. And maybe just noticing where that movement is most clearly felt in the body. Maybe in the nostrils, maybe in the chest, or maybe lower down in the belly. So no sense of needing to force this focus, or that this needs to be a very serious way of being. Just Oh, hi guys. Hey, so we have a first. Yeah, you may have noticed I disappeared there. So I'm not sure where you got up to. I reckon we've got another 5 minutes of practice in us, haven't we? So sorry I disappeared. My computer seems to be failing us. So let's go back into it, guys. So finding that posture that feels comfortable, right? We have our eyes closed if that feels comfortable. And all we're doing right now is we're listening. And it's interesting because in every practice, we'll notice that our minds become distracted, that there are thoughts present. And so maybe noticing right now where your mind has gone to, what thoughts are present. Maybe what came up for you during the distraction, during the break. And then just bringing the mind back again, as if your body were a microphone that is receiving the sounds that are coming to it from all the different directions. So noticing the sounds that are reaching us from further away, from outside the room or the building which we're in. As well as the sounds that are closer. And those that are really nearby, or even coming from us as we move and breathe. And being aware of the whole soundscape. Nothing more, nothing less. And not being fixated on any one noise. Just moving with the change of the pitch and pace of the different vibrations as different sounds become available to you. And noticing if you begin to label the sounds by identifying them, such as a voice or a passing car, someone moving nearby, or the wind in the trees. And each time you notice that your mind is making that label, creating a thought around it, or maybe a visual image, just noticing that and retuning the mind into the actual sound itself, without anything extra that we're adding to it. And perhaps we notice how challenging this is, how quickly our minds intervene and add layers to our experience. This is okay. This is noticing how our minds work. It helps us begin to understand the natural patterns of the thinking mind. And so if you find that you're starting to think about the sound, or the sound takes you on a journey, just trying to bring your awareness back to the nature of the sound, the length, the pitch, the tone, the volume. Maybe noticing how it is to not add anything of ourselves on top of it. Just being present for the sound itself. And as best you can, noticing the moment that a new sound arrives in your awareness. And staying present as you continue to hear it, and noticing any changes or pauses within it. And then if there's a moment where the sound stops or quietens, just noticing that too. And then for the last couple of minutes of this practice, we're going to turn this attention inwardly, moving from external sounds to internal sounds. So this is aligning our awareness with the thoughts that are passing through our mind in this moment. And again, just listening out to whatever happens to be present. Without any sense that we need to follow its storyline or create a judgment around it. We recognize the thought as a thought rather than a fact. Just like external sounds, it arrives, maybe it changes in some way, and then it moves on. And this could be a thought about the past, remembering something that recently happened or something from a while ago. Maybe it's a thought about something that's yet to come in the future. Maybe it's a thought about this very moment. Either way, the practice is the same, just noticing it, holding it in awareness, hearing the sound of the thought, and letting it go. And as we come towards the end of the practice, we're going to bring our attention back into the body, into the breath, the sense of the movement of the body as you breathe. Tuning into the sensations in the feet, the pressure against the floor, and the sense of the whole body sitting here, breathing. So with the sound of the bell, we can know the practice has come to an end. Just bring a little bit of gentle movement back into the body. A gentle stretch or a massage in that part of the body that would appreciate it. And then if the eyes are closed, you're invited to open them back up again. And as always, we have the chat box now open. So if anyone has anything that they'd like to say about how they found that practice, whether that came quite easily or naturally, the idea of sounds coming and going. Was there a lot of challenge in it? It's very difficult, perhaps, to hear the sound itself without automatically the mind generating a label of, oh, that's a car, or that's my neighbor shouting. And then we hear the neighbor shouting, we think, oh, why? There's a judgment. Why do we always have to, why do they always have to shout at this time? It's so annoying. And then, but also maybe for many of us, it felt quite relaxing and enjoyable, knowing that we have permission to just notice those reactions. We don't need to pursue them. We can just let them go. We have Adi saying it felt really good. Thank you for the great session. Oh, thank you, Adi. And I should also just apologize for my internet for dropping out. Very impressed everyone was still here when I came back. And also interested how people feel about this concept of the sounds in our own head, of the thoughts passing through our minds. Does this feel like something that makes sense to us in a theoretical sense or in a practical sense even? Does this feel like something that is available to us to observe, the thoughts in our own minds? We often hear them and kind of take them as fact. We have someone here saying, hi, it's my first time here and it was really enjoyable. Awesome. How many people is this their first time actually? Any hands up? Any virtual hands up? A couple of people. Cool. Well, we have just a couple of minutes left, guys. So if anyone wants to write anything in the chat box, you're really welcome to. Other than that, just a reminder that these sessions happen 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So it's going to be me again on Wednesday, and we have a few other mindfulness teachers as well who come and help out occasionally. So we've got a couple of those guys coming up a little bit in the next couple of weeks. Okay, well, we are at time. Oh, Mary, hi. Hey, Solomon, I felt like I was part of my environment in a way and felt more connected to it, paying more attention to the sounds. As for the second part, this type of technique really helps me to not identify with my thoughts and let them fly away. Thank you for this session. Have a great rest of the evening. Thank you, Mary. Really interesting, this idea that by tuning into the sounds around us, we can feel more connected and a part of our environment. Absolutely. And I love what you picked up on there about not identifying with the thoughts. That's a really good way of explaining it. I talked about not having to believe that thoughts are facts. Often we sometimes have a thought and we just, in that moment, we know it to be true. And then maybe the next day we think, oh, I thought this about someone, and it turns out just actually not to be true. I was just a little bit frustrated at the time. So it can be really helpful, this practice, to just see the thoughts come and go, and so we become less attached to them. Really nice. Thank you, Mary. We have someone saying, my first time too, I loved it. More people, thanks. It was really hard not to generate a label. It must take a lot of practice, but it's a really good session. Thank you. Yeah, it does take a lot of practice, and there's no expectation that that's going to change anytime soon, but just the practice of time and time again. Oh, sorry, guys, I realized I didn't have on the chat. God, the chat wasn't open for everyone, was it? You can send me private messages, so they're all starting to come through now. yeah, it's all a work in progress. It takes time. But even if every time we come to do this practice, we notice that the mind automatically labels the sound and starts to tell a story, that's okay too. Because each time we notice that that's happened, it's another moment of mindfulness. It's another moment of being able to step back. And that has really helpful uses and benefits too. So it's not like we should have this expectation that we're going to be able to sit with our experiences in a way that doesn't involve our minds, because our minds are there to think and they will carry on thinking. So that's okay. It's just developing that relationship to it. I'm Marge. I'm currently in Germany. I've been in a really bad state of mind for the past couple of weeks. I missed so much of the sessions. I feel a bit better by joining today. I've been feeling like a puppet of my own mind lately. Well, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. I'm sorry you've been having a tough time, and I'm sorry that you weren't able to join us for a number of sessions. A puppet of your own mind. Wow. I imagine probably many of us can on some level relate to that. It sometimes feels like we're not the ones in control. It's the mind doing its thing, and we're kind of automatically reacting to that. So yeah, consider yourself in good company. I think as a human being, that's quite a human experience. So sometimes that can be particularly challenging. We go through periods of time where that's really difficult. So I'm sorry that that was the case for you. I'm really glad that you could come here. Someone saying was looking forward to today's session. I was always feeling very peaceful and calm right now. Thank you. Brilliant. Okay, guys, we are a couple of minutes over time, but that's okay. As I said, I will be back at this same time on Wednesday. Really looking forward to hopefully seeing many of you here again. And yeah, I hope you have really happy, healthy, productive days and weeks and evenings. And I will see you all again very soon. Bye, everyone. Oh, I didn't mention, I mean, bye, but also now is open mic time. So for those of you who want to stay, you guys can hang out. I'll head off. You guys can unmute and chat and hang out. Sorry, forgot to mention that. Have fun. Bye, everyone.